Hey everybody, welcome back. And if you're new to the channel and you like what you see, please consider subscribing. I'd always appreciate it. But in today's video, we're going to be going over how to set up nitrous on your K-Series car using kpro and the kmanager software. We're going to go over everything from wiring the solenoids to the relays properly, wiring that all to your ECU, as well as how to properly wire the switches to activate and arm your nitrous. We're going to go into the kmanager software as well and set that and show how to set that up. Let's go ahead and get right into things. I'm going to try and keep today's video pretty short and to the point so we can just get through this and you can get the information needed to get your car running on nitrous. So as far as what nitrous kit I'm using goes, it's going to be the Nitrous Express ML2000 kit. It's a wet nitrous system with a 10-pound bottle, and I want to kind of talk about mounting your bottle. I obviously mounted mine in the trunk, and before you even begin to think about this, what I want you to do is go underneath your car and look at your gas tank. That's going to be what's going to determine where you put the holes for these mounting brackets and how deep you can drill. That's something you really need to pay attention to before you just go drilling holes through your trunk to mount your nitrous bottle, and then you go underneath and you find out you drilled straight into your gas tank. So keep that in mind. But once you do find the right spot for your brackets and you get that mounted, you want to go ahead and mount your nitrous bottle in there at a slightly upward angle, because there's a tube that goes down to the bottom, and it wants to suck up the nitrous from the very bottom of the bottle. That way you're not sucking up empty space, and you get a continuous feed through your line. You also want to mount it with the nozzle pointing downward, because like I said, there's a tube in there and it is angled, so it's going to angle down to the bottom of that bottom corner. Let's go ahead and move to the front where this line is actually ran to the solenoids, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so now we're at the front of the car. This is going to be our line coming from our bottle going down to our nitrous solenoid. Like I said, this is a wet nitrous system, so I also have a fuel solenoid, but whether you're running a wet or dry, wiring this up to your relay is pretty much going to be the same. Solenoids are pretty simple. They just have two wires coming off of them. One end is going to get grounded to your chassis, and the other end you can splice them together like I did to run through this one main wire, and that goes up to your relay. And then I'll put a wiring diagram up for you guys to check out from Hondata that shows you how to properly wire your solenoids to your relay and wire that to your ECU so that your ECU can, when you arm it and it hits the right parameters, actually send power or ground out your relay, and then that in turn will send power to your solenoids. Alright, so now that we've got our solenoids wired up to our relay, and you're going to have that one last wire that you're going to run through your firewall here. Sorry, running out of space, but you're going to run this last wire through your firewall here. But a quick way to check to make sure everything's working before you wire this to your ECU and think you got a software issue is to, one, make sure there's no pressure in any of the lines. Your car is off, but your relay is wired up to the battery, so it should have power. But you're going to ground out this wire, and you should hear not only the relay click, but both your solenoids, or your one solenoid, depending on if you're running a wet or dry system, should click as well when you ground out this wire. So after you do that, you're going to connect that wire to your ECU, and then we'll go ahead and we'll look in our kmanager software to help us determine which pin you're going to use and wire that to. But basically you're going to wire that one last remaining wire from your relay to your ECU. And then as far as an arming switch goes, these whatever switch you're going to use, a lot of people use their AC, like their air conditioning switch, because that is the standard input for the arming switch on Hondata. And if you're going to do that, you need to know that it's really important that one side of your switch needs to be grounded to your chassis. I have this switch running through these wires grounded back here against the firewall, and then the other end of the switch goes to the ECU connected to whatever arming input you choose. So it's important that you don't just tee into the wire. You need to completely disconnect the wire from the rest of the harness and then run that to a switch that is grounded on the other end. So that way when you flip the switch, it grounds that wire and it's going to actually arm your nitrous system. Alright, so here we are. We've got our kmanager software pulled up. We'll go ahead, turn the ECU on. Download. And there we go. We've got our tune that's on our ECU right now. So we want to go into parameters. And that's how we're going to start setting up our nitrous here. And then down here you've got nitrous 1. So this first option is going to be your arming input. So this is going to be the pin that you wire your switch to. So the switch that I talked about earlier, that you're going to have one side grounded and one side going to the ECU, that is going to be whatever pin you select on this arming input. And it's important to note this last little piece right here, ground equals on. That means that when you flip the switch and it grounds the wire, it's going to turn it on and arm your nitrous. The way that you can confirm that's happening is going through this table down here, and you've got N2O arm 1. So it should, oh wait, if I actually hit F10 here and take some live data, should under N2O arm 1, when I flip that switch, you see that box is highlighted now, and it shows that our nitrous arming parameters have been met. And so outside of that switch for arming and choosing which connector you use, and that's going to be one of the E is going to represent which plug on the ECU that it is. This far one right here is connector E, and then that number 29 after that is going to be what pin it is on that connector. And then you can invert your arming, which means it's going to flip that, whether grounding is on or grounding is off. And then below that, you've got your output control, and that is going to be the output. This one, standard, just through the AC clutch. That's what's actually going to go to your relay. So the wire that you had coming through your firewall that goes to your ECU, that connector, whatever you select under this parameter, is going to be the pin that you use to connect that relay to, and that's going to be the actual wire that, when the parameters you choose down here are met, will send power or ground out the relay. Ground out the relay, and so the relay can send power to the solenoids. And so a little bit below that, you're going to have all your parameters. So generally, you don't want nitrous to come on until at least 3,500 RPM. I put mine at 4,000 because when I'm at the track, I don't dip back below 4,000, and it's just what I put it at. And then you want it to cut off before you hit red line, before you hit your rev limiter. You don't want to be banging off the rev limiter with nitrous spraying. That would not be fun. Engine load, I just set my engine load at a point to where the parameter is always met. It's not going to really be dependent on engine load. I have mine at 0 for the minimum and 255 for the maximum, and that way that parameter is pretty much always met. It's just going to be dependent on my RPM and then my throttle. I have my throttle minimum at 80% and my maximum at 110%. That's because sometimes when you are full throttle, your TPS can read a little bit over. It is possible, and you don't want it to cut off when you go outside of that parameter. So 1 to 110. Vehicle speed, kind of self-explanatory. Minimum is going to be the minimum speed you want your nitrous to be able to turn on at, and then maximum is where you want it to cut off at, and then your knock count down here. That is going to be how many times your engine can knock before it deactivates your nitrous. Putting a 0 in there is going to pretty much disable that, and then whatever number you want to, just one thing of detonation or knock, and cut it out, cut it off, whatever. It's your choice. However, say if you want to keep your motor. Into that. So outside of that, we've got a couple other nitrous tabs, but let's see here. Okay, and then on the other end of this also, I mean, there's this top tab that's going to be disabled, or nitrous control, or water alcohol injection, dual boost. You want to set that as nitrous control, obviously. So below that, though, we've got this tab over here, fuel and ignition. These are going to be with the change here is going to be probably dependent on if you're running a wet or dry nitrous system. If you're running a dry nitrous system, you are going to play with your fuel here. And if you're running a wet system, you really shouldn't, unless you need to fine tune kind of further up in the RPM range or whatever you want to do. And this is going to be your ignition compensation. So generally, per every 50 horsepower of nitrous, you want to pull 2 degrees of timing. But when it comes to a nitrous kit, just because you install a 50 horsepower jet in your nitrous nozzle up there at the front going into your intake, it doesn't mean you're going to make exactly 50 horsepower. You could make less than 50 horsepower. You could make more than 50 horsepower. That's why even when you get this all set up, you still want to get yourself on a dyno, see how much power you're actually making on that jet, and that way you can safely adjust your timing accordingly. But general rule of thumb is about 2 degrees per every 50 horsepower. But you still want to get yourself on a dyno to get that tuned out. So that right there, that's going to be your basic nitrous setup. Not a whole lot to it. You just want to make sure you're actually getting it to arm. Confirm that through here. And then basically, so these cells are also going to be RPM. That's going to be like, where, when these parameters are met and the nitrous is spraying within this RPM range, you want to pull the timing or add fuel. At minimum, to get all this going, you're going to need a wideband air fuel gauge and tune from there. What you don't want to do for nitrous is you don't want to be going into your main fuel maps and adjusting your fuel to compensate for nitrous through there, because that is going to be your fuel whether you're using nitrous or not. So if you go ahead and try to go into your main fuel maps and tune for nitrous, and whenever you're not spraying nitrous, you're going to be running crazy rich. So it's important to understand that, and that your fuel adjustments are happening through here. Yeah, if you have any questions, anything, feel free to comment below. I hope you got something out of today's video. I hope it was pretty informational. You know how to get your nitrous set up, wired up, and set up through your kmanager. But after you do this, all you're going to do is save your settings, and then upload to the ECU, upload changes to your ECU right up here. Make sure you save this base map, and get yourself on a dyno, or if you really don't care about your motor, hit the street and test it out. But thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something, and feel free to comment below, and have a great day.